session is called Empowering Learners to Ask Questions. And as teachers, we use read alouds all the time. And so our purpose for reading a read aloud sometimes is for the pure enjoyment of it. But as teachers have been going on, they've also been using read alouds extremely effectively, all of you, as a springboard for very specific teaching strategies. And so typically, when a teacher teaches, they'll often use a read aloud or even a think aloud as a way of asking questions for the children, of scaffolding questions so that they can get to those deeper strategies, and using Bloom's, using all your higher level thinking skills. But today's presentation isn't about how to ask questions. It's about how to empower children to ask their own questions. And I think this is just very imperative in this day and age for a lot of reasons. First of all, when we ask all the questions, we're doing part of the work for the kids. It's kind of like when you're listening to a child read and they make a mistake and and then they know, oh, that's the one I need to fix. And you're actually, or if you're actually telling them go back and fix this word, you're doing part of the work for them. And what you want is a learner that has the capability of knowing which part there is to fix. What's the word I needed to work on? Or in this case, what questions do I need to ask? What questions do I have? And so we want to empower them to always have their own questions while they're reading, because then that's going to go into a lifetime of learning, and they're not going to be relying on someone else to do that part of the work for them, which is telling them what they're supposed to have questions about. Secondly, as we go into the Common Core, and as you start, especially in the upper grades, the rigor of the Common Core has upped the ante immensely. And they're really going into a lot of persuasive writing, persuasive speaking, and the children are going to be having, as part of literature, to respond in writing. And so knowing the questions that they're having and being much more on top of it is going to be really, really important as we get into the Common Core. And finally, for me, another is kind of a moral imperative. This is my little tweak on it. Because with Twitter and Facebook and all these things coming on, when we used to go look for information, we'd go to the library, it was published, it was reasonably reliable. They have access to all sorts of opinions that are not based on fact anymore. They are based on opinions and just people thinking out, or speaking out, and they have to learn to be discerning at a level that they've never had to be discerning before, and the sooner the better. And so having that imperative of asking questions and asking new questions is really important. So this lesson today is we're going to model a think aloud, which is modeled on the basic strategy that Marilyn talked about this morning of I do, we do, you do. And when you're doing a think aloud, when you're trying to empower children to have their own questions, you're going to be modeling a certain kind of question until they get good at that one question. So part of it is when you're doing your planning, maybe at the top of your plan book, deciding what that strategy, what that question is you're going to be modeling through the week, and then hopefully they'll get very good at that, and you'll start seeing that spontaneously as time goes on. I'm going to go quickly through this PowerPoint presentation. We're going to quickly go through this, then we have an example from a primary and an intermediate classroom of using this think aloud strategy out loud or in a classroom, so you get to see classrooms from the Monroe County Community School Corporation. They're our kids. You'll get to practice it with a partner. There's books on the table. And then we'll debrief after. We have some resources here. And then if there's time at the end, you can peruse through some other books that have been recommended for this particular strategy. Just going through really quickly, as we know, when kids are little, they drive you crazy with the questions. They're absolutely relentless about it. But the children don't always come to school with the language skills for the sophisticated ones. So it's taking that natural inquisitive to the next step, giving them the sophistication and the practice to be able to do higher level questions and to know that they have them. If we're not careful, they will just sit back and let us do all the work. So again, it's empowering them to get fully engaged in the process. It gives them the schema to ask questions syntactically and to access data. So you have all this on the PowerPoint presentation. That's why I'm going quickly, so you'll be able to mull it through. These were two quotes from the Mosaic of Thought that I really liked. The root of a question is quest. We can never underestimate the importance of questions, real questions, not the prepared questions at the end of the story or chapter, but questions that arise from a true desire to know more and to probe more deeply. And the second one, also from Mosaic of Thought. We do a great disservice to our students if we ignore, belittle, or disregard their questions. And we do them an even greater disservice if through our educational process we extinguish their need to question. When I read that, that hit me quite hard. So having our classrooms where it's safe to ask questions. Teaching questioning strategies, you start out with the teacher modeling. So they're going to do the think aloud, where you hear how the teacher is thinking about this particular question. Guided practice, it can be a turn and talk using a post-it note. There's various things that you're going to do it with the class. Independent practice, where you're going to set them a task to do when they go back to their table. And finally, independent application. Do you see them doing this spontaneously on their own when they're using their Good Fit books in their classrooms? Or, briefly, I do, we do, you do. Step one, when we show kids how, we reap big rewards. This is the teacher modeling. Think aloud process, and I'm not going to read this because it's on your paper. I want to get to the real things. Again, you're going to be doing it before, during, and after reading. And when you're doing your planning in your plan book, what I did was on the Thursday before, I find that really rich text and just have that time when I knew in my week I would have time to really sit and find it. And what is it that I'm going to be trying to show? And if you have that kind of scaled out, you can have your whole week in a way mapped out. And I found that that really helped. Whoops. I didn't know I was going to do that. You'll have thick questions where there's more than one answer, and thin questions, which is yes or no, raise your hand, sorts of things. These types of questions, especially these with the stars, are on your handout, and when you do your practice time, you can use those to help find a question. That's the second part of that. Then the guided practice, which gives them the scaffold, you're there to help them. Different kinds of things you can do for independent practice, tasks to give them. And then, of course, that last step of applying it and seeing if they're doing it spontaneously. The payoff, you understand that hearing others' questions inspires new ones of your own. Likewise, listening to others' answers can also inspire new thinking. And so Kari and Emily have videos from their schools. Kari's going to do a primary, and Emily's going to be doing an intermediate. And Kari will be focusing on what will happen next, and Emily will be clarifying the meaning.
Okay, so the lesson that you're going to see is a multi-age 1-2 classroom at Templeton Elementary. And basically what I'm doing, and you have this in your packet, is I'm following this lesson plan here. This is a lesson plan with the I do, we do, you do. Talks about the targeted skill, giving a direct explanation of what we're doing. And this is a lesson plan I developed 2 or 3 years ago for our interventionists. I'm at a title school, and so we are blessed with having people that can go in and really work with kids on targeted skills. So you will hopefully see me doing the right things with this lesson plan. And I am going to introduce the lesson. You'll see how I introduce the lesson. And then I'm going to probably speed up and back so that you can see a little bit of the we do and a little bit of the you do. We'll see how I do with the technology. This is the book I'm reading. You probably may be very familiar with it. In your packet, you have a list of books that we found on websites that various people have recommended to use this strategy with, and I hope I'm not taking too much time because we will talk about that later. So, okay, Linda, how do I get that? Okay,
So boys and girls, today we're going to talk about something we do when we read books. And it's called asking ourselves questions as we read. So when you meet a new friend, what do you sometimes ask them?
I ask what's your name?
That's a very good question. What's your name? Yeah. Are there any other questions you ask when you meet a new friend?
What do you like to do?
What do you like to do? I love it. Yeah.
Do you want to play down?
These are great questions. One more. Yes.
How are you?
How do you do? Very, very
Just
nice.
off the boat
Very
from
nice.
Africa.
Okay, thank you for asking such good questions. Well, you know, when we meet a new book, it's kind of like a new friend, isn't it?
Yeah, it's your book.
So, what I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you when we read, we ask questions. Because, you know, if we weren't curious and wondering about things, why would we even you know, because we're going to learn. And so you bring a lot to a book, right? Just like the book brings some things to you, you bring a lot to that book. And so when I read this book to you, I'm going to model. I'm going to show you how I do questions, okay? And I'm going to write some down so you can see what those are so we can remember. Because for me to remember, I sometimes have to write things down. And then I'm going to still read to you, and then we're going to do a we do where you're going to ask questions. Now the questions, you'll see, don't have to have the answer in them. It's just what are we thinking? And then at the end, you're going to go back to your seats and think about some questions in your own books that you're reading, or your read to sound. Now the two kinds of questions that we're going to think about today are, you know, when you're reading something and you come to a big long word, oh my gosh, what does that mean? Or it could be a little word. I don't know what that means.
Then follow him now.
Those are some types of questions. This book doesn't have too many of those. The questions we're really going to work on is we're going to think about what might happen next in the story and why. So those are the kind of questions you're going to hear me say. What's going to happen? Okay? So let's enjoy the story and answer some questions, all right? And as I'm asking questions, you'll be thinking of questions too about the book. Because there's no right or wrong question. It's just all what's in our good brains, okay? So give your brains a nice big tap. Because you've all got such a lot. Okay, a chair for my mother. Now, when we look at this cover first, automatically my mind goes to, well, there she is. I don't know where she's at. She's going in some blue building. And I think that's maybe the girl that it's going to be about. And maybe that's her mother. But I don't know, right? And what's a chair got to do with it? And I also see a big jar with it looks like some coins in the bottom. And wondering what it is. Now, if you've heard this story before, don't ask any questions, okay? Okay. Here's the first page, just like on the cover. My mother works as a waitress in the blue tile diner. There, after school, sometimes I go meet her there. Then her boss, Josephine, gives me a job too. I wash the salts and the peppers and fill up the ketchups. One time I peel all the onions for the onion soup. When I finish, Josephine says, "Good work, honey," and pays me. And every time I put half of the money in the jar. Well, we already had one of our questions answered, didn't we, from the friends? They wondered what this was. And they said it was a diner, a blue tile diner. So, to understand something, I wonder what a diner is. And did we kind of get what a diner was from there? I'm just going to, yeah, because if we fill up the salts and peppers and fill up the ketchups, I'm guessing from that a diner is a place to eat, like a restaurant. Then my other questions are, I wonder why she goes to her mom's work after school. Why doesn't she just go here? That's just what I'm wondering. And then my other question was, why does she put half her money in the jar? Well, maybe find out. Oh my gosh, that's a big jar. It takes a long time to fill a jar this big. Every day when my mother comes home from work, I take down the jar. My mother empties all the change from her purse into the jar. Because she gets tips. Then we push all the coins into the jar. Sometimes my mama is laughing when she comes home from work. Sometimes she's so tired she falls asleep while I count the money and put it into piles. Some days she has lots of tips. Some days she only has a little. Then she looks worried. But each evening, every single shiny coin goes into the jar. I'm wondering if she gets dollar bills too, and those just don't go into the jar. And I also wonder why all the tips go into the jar. And then I also wonder what I'm going to write a couple of these down. So I'm just going to say why is and then my other question was, I wonder, my mom is tired.
So we went on with the story, and now I'm going to jump to the part where, now on some pages I didn't have any questions. I'm going to jump to the part where they said some answers, or asked some questions.
Why was the room all empty? And I was how did the house catch on fire?
From the previous page, yeah, we never did figure that out. Anybody else have a question about this page?
I don't know where the cat got lost.
Yeah, we still don't know about that cat, do we? Okay, let's read this. Oh my goodness, this is a different page, isn't it? The first day we moved in to their new apartment, the neighbors brought pizza and cake and ice cream. They brought a lot of other things too. The family across the street brought a table and 3 kitchen chairs. The very old man next door gave us a bed from when his children were little. My other grandpa bought us a big, beautiful rug. My mother's other sister, Sally, had made us red and white curtains. Mama's boss, Josephine, brought pots and pans and silverware and dishes. My cousin brought me her own stuffed bear. Everyone clapped when my grandma made a speech. You are all the kindest people, she said, and we thank you very, very much. It's lucky we're young and can start all over.
Well, they got 2 beds.
They got 2 beds. So did some of our questions get answered? Do you have any other questions about this page right here?
Why did they bring food?
Oh, don't answer, it's just a question that we can answer. Are there any other questions that we're thinking to read on about?
Because they didn't have any food.
Maybe. Do you have any good, do you have any other questions about the story? Yes, sir.
Why didn't the grandma find the cat?
Okay, we're still worried about that cat, aren't we? We never did find out, but she's okay, right? Yes, sir.
Why did they bring them stuff?
Why did they bring all those pots and pans and, yeah, it was really nice. Don't answer, we're just having those questions in our heads, right? Because we read to find out. It's really great, because you're bringing your questions to the book, right? And he's adding them. Okay, I'm just.
Okay, and I didn't read the whole story, so now we're going to see the
you to go back, because remember our I do, we do, you do, so now is the time for you. And some of the questions can start with what and why and how, right? I want you to pick up one of your books and read as much as you need to until you can think of one question in your reading. You can do that? One question in your reading. It doesn't have to be answered, but just one question that helps you move you on and wonder what's going to happen next, right? Or what is this? What are pumps? Or something like that, right? So one question. Okay, I would like the boys to stand up first.
And then we got back together. And I had them writing in their journals. So they wrote in their journals, they came back together, and they had wonderful questions. They did, they really did a great job. So, do you have any questions? Okay, that's the primary lesson, all right? That was easy.
I had the chance to work in Linda Rollins' 5th grade class. She teaches at Marlin. And last year, most of her class, they were students in my class. And it was so much fun for me to get to see how much they've grown over the course of almost a year at this point. So I read the book Fly Away Home by Eve Bunting, and you're not going to see the beginning of the book. Where we started filming was more towards the middle. You're not going to see the end either. But for the most part, you're going to see the I do, you do, we do as best we could demonstrate on the film. Linda was our camera woman also, so not only did she let me teach in her class, but she filmed for me. That was great. I have a copy of the lesson. It's in the packet that starts with types of questions. It's the 2nd page. So if you will, it's this packet right here. If you'll flip to the 2nd page, this is mostly what you're going to see on the video. So let's hope, Kari, that technology works for me too.
Here. We have lots of questions about the story so far. Why is the title Fly Away Home? Why don't they talk to anyone when they're in the airport? And most importantly, what does it mean not to have a home or be homeless? We talked about how being homeless might mean living in the streets, having raggedy clothes, and we know so far that the father and his boy, that's not the case. They live in a building. They have blue clothes and blue bags. So I'm going to read on and I'm going to go over some of my questions that I have in my mind, and then I'm going to challenge you to come up with some questions with your turn and talk partner. We buy donuts and milk for breakfast at one of the cafeterias, standing in line with our red trays. Sometimes Dad gets me a carton of juice. So we talked about this boy and his father being homeless. Living on the street, we said, was what we thought homeless was, having raggedy clothes. How do they have money for food in the cafeteria if they're homeless? That's what I'm very curious about. And I have that question on a poster right here, that we can add that to the chart. But I'm very curious about that because what we said homeless was being on the streets, not having any money or a job like him as was earlier. So I'm very curious how they're in the cafeteria. So let's read on and see if we can find out what maybe the answer to that question is. On the weekends, Dad takes the bus to work. He's a janitor in an office in the city. The bus fares $1 each way. So that's very interesting. Dad has a job. So I guess I understand how they have money for food. But now I'm wondering, why are they living in the airport if Dad has a job? Hannah had said earlier, people that are homeless, they don't have money or jobs, and here the father has a job. And he even has money to pay for the bus. So I'm thinking, and I see that some of you have questions too. I'm going to give you a chance to talk about your questions with your partner. I'm going to read the next page, and your job with your partner on your new Post-it, write 1 or 2 questions you have down about this next page that I'm getting ready to read to you. So get ready, and I'll even stop and give you a chance to talk to your partner. On those days, Mrs. Medina looked out for me. The Medinas live in the airport too. Grandma, Mrs. Medina, and Denny, who's my friend. He and I collect rented luggage carts that people have left outside and return them for 50 cents each. If the crowds are big and safe, we offer to carry bags. Get this one for you, lady? It looks heavy. Or, can I call you a cab? Denny's really good at calling cabs. That's because he's 7 already. Sometimes passengers don't tip. Then Denny whispers, "Stingy." But he doesn't whisper too loud. The Medinas understand that it's dangerous to be noticed. I want you to think questions you have about what you heard on this page or previous pages. I want you to turn to your partner, talk to your partner about questions, write 1 or 2 of them down on your blue Post-it. Go ahead and you can get started.
That's real. Hey, that happened. That's very real. Couldn't be planned. They're not usually as shy as they seem to be on the video. They're usually a little more talkative.
Yeah, I'm very impressed with the videotaping. It would be very shaky if I had done it on anything but a tripod.
I really like people, I see, discussing the questions, and a lot of people pause to write that down. That's great. Write that down. You're still writing the questions. Please finish your writing. I do want some people to share. You may share your own question, or if you really like your partner's question, go ahead and share either one. It doesn't matter. Leon, would you mind sharing your question with us? Say that a little bit louder.
I don't know.
Why don't passengers tip them sometimes? That's very interesting. I'm wondering that too. Kylie.
How did they find out they were doing that on this day?
How did they find out the Medinas were homeless also? I like that. Because everybody's trying not to get noticed, so that's a very good question. Ellen.
How did the boy and his dad have
The dad has it. Go ahead.
I wonder if they ever mentioned anything about
Say maybe Mr. Medina goes to work with the boy in the store saga. Maybe there isn't. We're gonna stop. I gave everybody a yellow Post-it. We're gonna pause because I want you to use your yellow Post-it. I want you to take your independent reading book. I want you to read it. And any question that pops in your mind about your own book, I want you to write that on the yellow Post-it. We're gonna come back and we're gonna share some of our questions from our independent reading book. Maybe add some more questions to our chart by way home and hear the ending of the story too. I want you to find a place in the room where you can focus, have your yellow Post-it ready.
One thing that wasn't on the film that I did want to point out, Linda had mentioned earlier that we were trying to ask questions and clarify meaning. What we were trying to clarify was, what is the definition of homeless? Because at the beginning, before we did film, I asked some of the kids, what does it mean to be homeless? And I was referring to that on video so you could hear a little bit of it. But their definition was someone who lives on the streets, has raggedy clothes, doesn't have a job, doesn't have money, which is quite the opposite of this book. So at the end, which you didn't get to see, I asked, what does it mean to be homeless? And those same students I called on, and their answers were different. So it did clarify what it means to be homeless. You can't have a job. And you don't have to live on the street. You could live in a shelter or a building like the boy and his father do in this book. They lived in an airport. So it was very interesting to see some of these kids who I'm sure when I started reading thought, oh, she's reading us a picture book. But to see that their mind changed even though it wasn't what they're used to reading. Some of the students read 500-page books. But they still were challenged to change their definition of what homeless meant. So it was clarifying their meaning a little bit more. And like I said, I did copy the lesson for you. And what I put in there is mostly what I put on the video. And we do, like Kari had mentioned earlier, have a list of books in your packet that you could use for questioning besides the two that we modeled on our lesson. So
right now we're going to give you a chance to practice this strategy. There's a pile of books on the table and also a sheet, mine's white, but yours is yellow, that has two sections. So one you can write on, and then the other one you can make copies when you go back so that you can have a next one as well. So what to think about doing, this would be for your own class, but especially this targeted skill. When you look at a book and pick one you're familiar with, what kind of question are you going to be modeling? Is it going to be clarifying? And again, there's one of the handouts has a list of the questions about this on the other side. Yep. So it has the things from Mosaic of Thought. So you're going to have them clarify meaning, speculate or predict about the text, so show skepticism in a critical sense, author's intent, finding a specific answer in the text. So think of one of the purposes. What are you exactly going to do when you find in the first part of the book, how are you going to model asking that question with a text? And where are you going to stop when you read? That's a good place. That's going to evoke that kind of question out of the children. And then what kind of task are you going to set for them in their independent reading? And so we're going to take about 8 minutes. It won't be very long to have time to wrap up at the end before we go to your next session. And if you can, you can work on your own, but also you can work together with a partner because someone might know a book and streamline the process as well. Big ones. Yeah.
Yeah.